We look up at the night sky, a vast and silent canvas of light and darkness. For millennia, humanity has gazed into this same cosmic ocean, feeling a profound sense of awe and asking the deepest questions of existence. Who are we? Why are we here? And what power could have possibly set all of this into motion? Ancient peoples just like us sought answers not in telescopes, but in poetry, in story, and in sacred texts that tried to give voice to the inexpressible. Deep within the Hebrew Bible, in one of its oldest and most philosophically challenging books, we find such an attempt. The Book of Job, a timeless exploration of suffering and divine sovereignty, contains a passage that speaks directly to this cosmic grandeur. In a single breathtaking verse, the author encapsulates the sheer scale of God's creative power. In the poetic language of the King James Version, chapter 26, verse 13 reads, "By his Spirit he hath garnished the heavens, his hand hath formed the crooked serpent." These words paint a picture of divine artistry and effortless control. But this verse holds a secret, a translational puzzle that, once unlocked, reveals a far more dramatic story of creation. However, this poetic and majestic image of creation undergoes a significant transformation in many modern and later translations. The delicate balance of the verse is altered, shifting the meaning of this passage dramatically. Instead of a breath that adorns and a hand that forms, we are presented with a very different scene, one rooted in conflict rather than creation. These newer versions often render the second half of the verse as, "His hand has pierced the fleeing serpent." Notice the abrupt jump to a violent action. The word pierced introduces a sense of combat and destruction, starkly contrasting with the creative act of garnishing the heavens just moments before. This disrupts the poetic flow and the parallel structure of the verse, which beautifully pairs God's Spirit with his hand in a unified act of cosmic ordering. The serpent is no longer a formed part of the celestial tapestry, but an adversary to be vanquished. The description changes from a crooked or gliding serpent, which could simply describe its character, to a fleeing serpent, casting it as a defeated enemy on the run. This single change in translation reframes the entire passage, moving it from a hymn of creation's grandeur to a narrative of divine warfare against a chaotic foe. Jerome sought greater accuracy by bypassing the Septuagint, which he saw as sometimes the interpretive translation, or corrupt in general. Jerome renders the passage with adductus est, brought forth, via obstetrice manu, midwife hand, a birth metaphor for creation order emerging from chaos. Jerome's translation, we, by his hand acting as midwife, the twisted serpent was brought forth. Robert Young's literal translation used the Masoretic text as its primary Old Testament source, specifically the Textus Receptus edition of the Hebrew Bible. His goal was strict formal equivalence to the Hebrew consonants and grammar, hence the rigid, often awkward English. From his translation, verse 13, "By his breath the heavens have been adorned, his hand hath formed the fleeing serpent," from the Latin Vulgate, the literal English rendering. By his Spirit the heaven is adorned, and by his hand acting as midwife the twisted serpent was brought forth. The Douay Rheims Bible also captures this sentiment. His Spirit hath adorned the heavens, and his obstetric hand brought forth the winding serpent. The crooked fleeing serpent here emphasizes formation, creation by God's hand, not piercing, which belongs to future judgment as seen in Isaiah 27:1. Job isn't prophesying Leviathan's death. He's declaring Yahweh created the chaotic serpent as part of his ordered cosmos. Theologians often resist this because it ties directly to Isaiah 45:7. Yahweh created evil also. They prefer pierced to shift the focus to combat and creaturely rebellion, avoiding God's responsibility. But the older translations and Hebrew sense fit seamlessly. Yahweh formed the waster to destroy from the beginning for his purposes. In short, his hand hath formed the crooked serpent upholds the consistent biblical truth. Yahweh created all, light and darkness, peace and evil, beauty and the adversary, for his glory and plan. The modern shift to pierced softens that sovereignty and lightens the load on theologians who are afraid to speak the truth.